Back in 2026, a war exploded that completely redrew the map of the Middle East. Today, we're going to explain how it all went down. We're going to walk through the opening strikes, the tense years of escalation that led up to them, and the global chaos that followed, all based on the public record.
So picture this, it's a Saturday morning, February 28th, 2026. Before most of the world has even had its first cup of coffee, a massive, coordinated military strike is launched against Iran. Just like that, the fragile peace is shattered, and a conflict is ignited that would spiral across the entire region. And of course, right after the first bombs fell, statements like this one from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu started to roll out. The official reason was pretty clear. This was a preemptive strike designed to take out an existential threat. But the real question is, how did we even get to this point? Let's start with the attack itself.
Okay, let's dive into our first section. A war begins. We're going to look at the opening moments that set this fire off.
The attack was a joint U.S.-Israeli operation. The Americans called it Operation Epic Fury, and for Israel, it was Roaring Lion. Now, this huge wave of airstrikes wasn't just hitting military sites. No, it was aimed right at the heart of Iran's leadership. And in a move that stunned everyone, the strikes actually killed the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, in his own compound in Tehran. I mean, this was a decapitation strike. It guaranteed a massive and immediate response from Iran. And that response came quick, codenamed Operation True Promise IV. That IV basically telling the world this was the next chapter in an ongoing fight, and it was going to be on a whole different level.
So how on earth did we get here? Right, this didn't just happen overnight. This was really the result of years and years of tension just building and building.
You can really see the story unfold when you look at the timeline. It arguably kicks off in 2018 when the U.S. pulls out of the Iran nuclear deal. That was immediately followed by a relentless maximum pressure sanctions campaign that just hammered Iran's economy. By the end of 2025, that economic pain exploded into these huge nationwide anti-government protests. And then, the final trigger, last-ditch nuclear talks in February 2026, just completely fall apart, only days before the attack. You see? Each step just added more and more fuel to the fire.
And if you want to understand just how severe that economic pressure was, just look at this number. By December of 2025, it took 1.45 million Iranian rials to equal a single US dollar. This kind of collapse pushed millions of people into poverty, and it was the main thing driving those massive protests. It created this state of extreme fragility inside Iran.
So what was the final nail in the coffin for diplomacy? Well, it really depends on who you ask. On one side, you had the U.S. and Israel, and they were demanding a permanent, total end to uranium enrichment. They said they had intelligence that Iran was planning an attack. But on the other side, you had the Omani mediators who were saying, hey, a breakthrough was within reach, and that Iran had agreed never to stockpile enriched uranium. In the end, it seems like diplomacy just failed because the two sides were on completely different planets. Their positions were just irreconcilable.
And if there was any doubt about the ultimate goal here, this quote from U.S. President Donald Trump, which came out shortly after the strikes began, it cleared everything right up. It went way beyond just hitting military targets. This was a direct, explicit call for regime change, telling the Iranian people to rise up and, quote, take over your government.
Okay, so the first shots are fired, but that was just a spark. Now we get to see how the whole region just ignites.
Iran's retaliation wasn't just fast, it was everywhere at once. We're talking within hours, hundreds of missiles and drones were in the air, heading for U.S. military bases all across the Persian Gulf. At the very same time, its powerful ally Hezbollah opened up a second front against Israel from Lebanon. And then, Iran made its biggest strategic move. It shut down the Strait of Hormuz, effectively choking off one of the most important arteries for the world's oil supply.
And as you can see here, this thing just spiraled out of control almost instantly. It wasn't a U.S.-Israel-Iran fight anymore. All of a sudden, U.S. allies across the Gulf, we're talking Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, they all found themselves directly under fire. The war even stretched to Europe, with the British base in Cyprus getting hit by a drone. And of course, a full-scale border war erupted between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon.
And of course, with any conflict like this, there is an immediate, devastating human cost. While the exact numbers were, as you'd expect, fiercely debated, the initial reports painted a really grim picture. Sources were talking about thousands of military and civilian deaths inside Iran, with dozens of casualties also being reported in Israel and among U.S. forces stationed in the region.
You just can't have a war this scale in such a critical part of the world without it sending shockwaves across the entire planet. So what was the biggest, most immediate shockwave? It was economic, and it all comes down to this. By closing the Strait of Hormuz, Iran instantly took 20% of the world's daily oil supply completely off the market. 20%. 1/5 of the world's oil gone, just like that. For the global economy, this was a body blow, and a perfect example of how a regional conflict can become everybody's problem overnight.
The chain reaction was immediate, and it was global. You saw oil prices just shoot up. Stock markets, they plummeted. International travel to the region basically ground to a halt. European nations even started mobilizing their naval forces to go protect Cyprus. The fear wasn't just about the war itself anymore. It was about the very real possibility that it could tip the entire world into a new recession.
So, while all this is happening on the outside, what's going on inside Iran? Well, total chaos. With the supreme leader dead, there was a massive power vacuum. So the state announced it was forming this interim leadership council to try and manage the war and the country. This was a huge deal. It marked the complete shattering of the old political order and threw Iran's entire future into total uncertainty.
So there you have it. In just a matter of days, a shadow conflict that had been simmering for decades boiled over into a full-blown war. It got a head of state killed, it pulled in over half a dozen countries, and it put the entire global economy on a knife's edge. With an interim government trying to run things into Iran and the whole region descending into chaos, we're left with the most important and frankly unsettling question of all: what comes next?